Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. I am delighted to have my friend Yasuhiko Kimura back. And we're going to be talking about a topic which is of critical importance to all of us. And that is new spirituality for the future. So welcome Yasuhiko, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, so how about we start with what is spirituality?
Okay. My definition of spirituality is the highest dimension or the highest realm of human intelligence, which has been tapped by few in the past. And we have, as humanity, has the potential to tap into in a much larger scale in the future. So, human intelligence, from my perspective, has four basic levels. And spirituality or spiritual intelligence is the highest. The lowest basic level is what is called information processing, which is the application of what we know. So we learn, we apply. And there are some problems, you apply what you know and processes that information and come up with a solution. And computers today, artificial intelligence does this very well. They can have more information storage, recollection ability, therefore combining those information to come up with a solution. In many areas, they have already surpassed humans. So that's basic level. And that's where the IQ tests basically our ability for this information processing, memory, and the logical processing, and solving problems. And second level, I call it intellection, which is also traditionally called reason. And this is a understanding of underlying patterns of different pieces of information or piece of knowledge. And through understanding the underlying pattern, similar patterns, you create new knowledge. In many ways, what you are trying to do in your presentation and your core learning process in this program, in your program, is this. You study Hinduism, you study Taoism, you study Buddhism, you study Christianity, you understand them, and then you begin to see the underlying pattern. You did the beautiful presentation on this underlying pattern. And then once you see this, you are now able to create a new body of knowledge from this. So this is an interaction. And the next level is an intuition, like higher intuition. And it is totality of knowledge is divisible. But when it is transformed into wholeness, it becomes an indivisible whole. And intuition is that piece of knowing that transforms the totality into wholeness. So we have our great mathematical friend, Francois here. This one of the greatest minds of 20th century in mathematician, or you can say meta-mathematician, Kurt Gödel had this two incompleteness theorem. Now, I'm not an expert on this, so extrapolating what he said. he has basically shown the limit of logic-only argumentation. Inherent contradiction that exists, and inherent inability for a mathematician to prove the consistency of the set of axioms. In my view, Kurt Gödel actually indirectly has shown the necessity and validity of intuition for developing mathematics and coming up with mathematical truth. So long as we deal with the totality, there's an inherent contradiction in the inherent unknowability. But intuition opens up us into the level, dimension of unknown. And from there, you actually extract knowing, which transforms the totality into wholeness. So this, I'm talking about the higher function of intuition. When the great mathematicians and great scientists have an insight. And that intuition, most people don't have. And so it is important, for humans to develop. And information processing and intellection. Information processing, artificial intelligence can do better than humans. And the intellection of this seeing underlying patterns, artificial general intelligence will develop more and more and augment humans. This intuition is a uniquely human capability. I don't know, 3,000-4,000 years from now, maybe artificial intelligence may become so good, maybe it become intuitive. I do not know. Unlikely. You need to have body, sense organs, and perceptive organs to be able to have this kind of intelligence. But anyway, so that is intuition. And spiritual intelligence, or we can call it inspiration, okay, information, intellection, intuition, inspiration, spiritual intelligence in the way I'm talking about. It is distinct from the first three. The first three deals with effect. I was just talking about this effect and cause. So in science, we talk about causality and causation, cause and effect. But when you look at them, it is all a matter of effect, a chronological or ontological order. Something comes before something else. You call this cause. And the Buddhist has this reticular causation theories. There are many different elements coming together to create an effect. But the elements that constitute this reticular causation are also effect. And so cause is hidden. You see, effects are perceptible and sensible. Cause are super sensible and super perceptual. Actually, not super, actually supra sensory and supra perceptual. It is invisible. It is literally metaphysical. And with my limited knowledge of science, I came across only two people who really dealt with the dimension of cause in a scientific way. One is a Walter Russell I was just talking about. He was not a scientist, he's an artist. He was an artist, musician and painter, sculptor, architect, composer, pianist, and organist. But he had this cosmic illumination, 39 days and night. I always joke about the 39 days. People ask, 39 days, what is it? Okay, he was such a good Christian. He didn't want to surpass Jesus. Jesus was 40 days in the spiritual illumination. But anyway, he was in that causative dimension for 39 days and nights. And when he came out, he began to draw and develop a cosmogony. There's an ontogony, causation of being, the cosmogony, causation of the cosmos. And he developed the theory. The book is named The Universal One. And there was somebody else before, in the 18th to 19th century, Roger Boschkovich. He had the same ethnicity as Nikola Tesla. He lived in Dubrovnik. He was a polymath. He discovered the inconsistency in Newtonian physics and Leibniz physics, and he corrected them and combined Newton and Leibniz to come up with a new theory in the early 19th century. Nietzsche read Boschkovich, and his idea of will to power is his unique interpretation of Boschkovich's cosmology.
Wow.
So will to power has a cosmological foundation, which we will talk about in my program in the near future. So this is Boschkovich, a theory of natural philosophy. You should buy this large edition because small edition you can't read it. Characters are too small. Latin and English translation. This is Walter Russell's Universal One. I was actually a director of a Walter Russell Foundation for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
So I'm extremely intimate with him. Yes. So speaking of science and spirituality, those two people has really got into the dimension of cause, which is unique. Now, going back to our conversation. So up to the intuition, information, intellection, and intuition, even in intuition, your intelligence captures only effect. You are conscious of something. You always, the knowledge becomes an object of your awareness and consciousness. But what your consciousness is conscious of are effect, all the way to the intuition. When you go into the dimension of inspiration, spiritual intelligence, you are actually at one with the causative dimension of existence. So what happens? It is a knowledge of cause, but it is given in such a way that the knower is the knowing, is the known. So your knowing is the same as your being. And that is the uniqueness of spiritual intelligence. Franklin Merrill Wolf used the term knowledge through identity. Sri Aurobindo used knowledge by identity. knowing by it, knowing by being it. Knower is a known, is a knowing, and knowing is being. And when you get to this, yes.
Yasuhiko, let me point out, I was reading Jnaneshwar. So he puts it, Jnata, Jnaya, and Jnana are all one. So Jnata is one who is knowing, Jnaya is what you are trying to know, and Jnana, what you know, is one. So when that becomes one, that state, please go on.
Wow, it's amazing. Well, actually, one thing I have in common with the super genius, I am not one of them, but one thing in common, when I was 16, I came to realize this.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
You are lucky, and we are lucky that you're still around. You know, he was there only till 21. You had a good more years than him, and
well,
it's wonderful.
My similarity with him end there. Anyway, so Walter Russell calls this language of light. And yesterday, when I was speaking with our friend Yasmina, we were talking about freedom and beauty. And I define beauty as the expression and experience of the language of light. And you really get in touch with the cosmic dimension of reality when you encounter something beautiful. When you create, you bring that into existence through your artwork. And when he says language of light, light is not just a regular light we talk about. More than that. And this Boschkovich called this massless point of force. So photon is one of the few subatomic particles that has no mass. So there's a similarity there. This language of light is called Logos in the Bible, Tao by Lao Tzu, and Dharma by the Buddhist, Dharma in the most cosmic sense. So in the beginning is the language of light, Logos, Tao. Chronologically, it is eternal. So it has always was, but also every moment of our being in the beginning is the Logos, the Tao, the Dharma. And spiritual intelligence allows us to be at one with it. What happens is, when this happens, you experience beauty, love at the level of divinity. That's truly sublime. So it is not just intellectually. Your intellect is involved, but all of your being merges into cosmic intelligence, so to speak. And that is spiritual intelligence, and that is achieving it and living in it is spirituality. And humanity has seen many great sages who have attained that state of being. probably India produced more of those people than any other country. Just last century alone, we have so many.
Wonderful. So Yasuhiko, the thing that really intrigued me about your description of this meetup is your observation that these seeds, these spiritual seeds, are produced in various soils. So this idea that there is soil that grows seeds. And second observation you had is that the seeds grow in certain soils. So the soil that produced it may not necessarily grow that seed. So, but there is this beautiful thing. So can we talk about the seeds that have been produced in the past? Go ahead.
Yes, you see, the spiritual knowledge is truly holistic. It's whole, beyond the dimension of intuition. And so when Buddha, Krishna, or Christ attained the spiritual intelligence as a spiritual experience, that knowledge contains the whole. And it's always, you can say it's like infinite, yes? The infinite becomes finite in their expression. And what more their finitude is the culture, the language, and general consciousness of people to whom they speak and with whom they live. And there are more to their realization than what they said. And that more part has to wait until different culture or different language or different whatever shows up so that it can grow, expressed. And for example, and we can say Buddha was one of the Upanishadic sage. In many ways, you know, there is no real fundamental difference between what he said and the Upanishadic sages said, although there are uniqueness to his expression. He used a different kind of vocabulary and so on. One of the unique aspects of Buddhist realization was more emphasis on becoming in contradistinction to being. So Hindu mind, Indic mind is highly metaphysical and structure oriented. And their mode of expression is filtered through that structure orientation and being orientation, which is absolutely beautiful. And Buddha paid more attention to the becoming aspect and impermanence. For example, it is a becoming. Every moment is a passing moment. Now, the moment you say N-O-W, the moment you say W, N is gone. And it is not something becoming something, no. Becoming. There is nothing. You can't thingify. Thingification is to turn becoming into being. But in the soil of Indic culture and the Indic mind, that is highly metaphysical and highly structurally oriented, that aspect of Buddha's insight didn't have the right soil to fully blossom.
Wow, Yasuhiko, let me just say one thing. I mean, this actually answers a really kind of big question that I've pondered for a long time. If you want to look at export of ideas from one culture to another, clearly Buddhism is way up there in terms of what idea was transferred, was born in one culture, was transferred to another culture, and it flowered there. So I've always wondered, why is it that Buddhism flowered in East Asia? It took root in East Asia. And what you're saying, and after reading Tao Te Ching and understanding the Western, the Chinese mind or East Asian mind, it makes perfect sense. So thank you. This is a very, very good observation. Please go on.
Yes. So, for example, Taoism, they use flow of water as a metaphor for Tao. There is the process-oriented mode of thinking was present both in China and Japan and Tibet. So from metaphysical to phenomenological observation. And Buddha was unique amongst all Indic sages, that he warned against over metaphysicalization of anything. And so when somebody asks a very metaphysical question, he says, okay, do this and find out for yourself. So it was very phenomenological approach. And that phenomenological approach really fit into Chinese, Tibetans and Chinese and Japanese and Koreans. So Buddhism, especially this aspect of Buddhism, blossomed. And Mahayana Buddhism that developed in India, are still very metaphysical, structure-oriented. But once it is has been translated into Chinese by Kumarajiva and others, Kumarajiva, I don't know how to pronounce his name in Indic language. It has gained something. So Japanese became more metaphysical in one sense. On the other hand, it actually transformed the Buddhist teaching into something that was not possible in the Indic culture. And when you study Dzogchen or Zen or Tendai, all those Chinese, Japanese, Tibetan Buddhist context and text, you can see Buddhism blossomed there. The seed was there with Buddha, but it took centuries after they were exported into different regions on the planet that it blossomed. So there are those seeds there.
Yes.
So, when we talk about new spirituality of the future, we need to look at the seeds.
Let me, Yasuhiko, sorry to interrupt. I have to tell you this. This is really interesting. There is this gentleman, Walter Ong, who has studied kind of orality and literacy. And he has a very beautiful sentence. He says, all text is pretext.
Yes.
Because, and my completion of that sentence is, all text is pretext because it is missing the context.
Mm-hmm.
So text actually depends on a context. It is, it is born of the context. And if you take it out of the context, it is nothing really. You have to bring it back into context to contextualize it. Please go on.
Yes. So Asian language is highly context dependent, maybe more so than Western language. They are keenly aware of the context in which the language is used. And so what he says is correct. And that awareness is more keen in the Western language. I'm sorry, Eastern language, Chinese, Japanese. Anyway, that's why the same words, Dao, Dharma, in Japanese and Chinese, means 10 different ways, because the context is shifted ongoingly. Context shift and the text shift and the meaning shift. Yes.
Wonderful.
So anyway, so let's see. So the seed that was available in old spirituality, and actually it blossomed in a much smaller scale in the past, which is now available for us to really make it blossom, is this affirmation of reality. For example, Buddhism starts with this first noble truth: life is suffering. Christianity, original sin. And in the past, life was very tough. And so spirituality used to begin with saying no. When you read the Bhagavad Gita or those, ancient texts, they deny this world on the one level of reading, which is most commonly read that way. And human desire, you suffer because of your desire. Buddha didn't really say that. But desire is denied. How we are now, as we are as humans, are denied. So religion and spirituality of the past fundamentally is negation-based. Nietzsche would say nihilism. So divine is good, mundane is bad. So you deny mundane, and all that comes with mundane, including desires of natural desires, not just the mimetic desires, but natural desires. And you become, yogi in a kind of narrow way. You become fakir, aesthetic, and deny everything to achieve whatever. Christianity, you suffer, so that you go into the heaven after you are dead. The promise of heaven and reality of hell. At the best, purgatory.
Mm-hmm.
And new spirituality that is available to us today and into the future is a spirituality that was spoken by few enlightened masters and achieved by them. It's affirmation-based, not negation-based spirituality and religion. So in my program on freedom, I said, freedom is an absolute affirmation of reality as it is. The past, the present, and the possible future, good and evil, joy and suffering. Everything that exists and ever existed and will ever exist, you give 100% plus affirmation. Yes, absolutely yes. That becomes the basis of your existence and of your spiritual practice. You say no only on that basis. So there's an absolute yes as a foundation. And then you say yes to something, yes, you say no to something. But then this saying no becomes more like what is not conducive to your evolution, drop away. Shogo Genzo, he talks about, the let your body, mind, and the body mind of others drop away. So no is no longer a forced discipline, but natural occurrence. You nurture a flower and eliminate weed, or you see a flower in weed, and weed is transformed into flower. So my first noble truth is life is joy, and this joy is more like ananda. You start from there, and that is the seed of this insight is Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhists realize this. In order to go from this shore to the other shore, you must first come from the other shore. To achieve more light, you need to have a light. So Buddha, in Tibetan translation, is a process of light spreading and darkness dissipating. Buddha is a dissipative structure in which syntropy increases more and more, and entropy disappears more and more. And there is a fundamental difference in our spiritual practice. If you start from absolute yes, as opposed to negation. And there is no such thing as an absolute negation. Negation requires something which you negate. Absolute affirmation is a causative act. You actually bring everything into existence. So when you affirm reality as it is, you choose what is and what isn't. You can't change your past, but you can choose your past as it was. It is at cause. You become the cause of it. You become an ontogenetic agent of your existence, so that you say yes, absolutely yes to what happened. Now you are the cause of what happened. Causation is not something, always creation. Causation is a choosing that has been created already. But once you do this, it is different from being at the effect of the past, but you become the cause of the past. It is, you are in charge of what it was. So when you say life is joy, life is ananda. It is not the joy and the sorrow kind of a joy. It is a fundamental ecstasy that underlies life. So we say yes to reality, then we start to say yes to this ecstasy that underlies all of what we call emotion. So new spirituality of future is affirmation-based, absolute affirmation-based. Once this happens, this becoming process becoming an overcoming process. Overcoming in a sense of those elements of your being and consciousness that are inconducive to your ongoing evolution drop away. You say no. And if you don't do that, if you stop it, or if you don't let this happen, you feel pain, really. You know, when I had that experience when I was 16, and later on, I had to lie to my teacher that I'm sick. I have to be away from everybody for 2 weeks or so to absorb that, you know, experience, and didn't want to be left alone completely. So it happened 2 days before my birthday, which was Saturday. My birthday was Monday, which is national holiday of Japan. Not because it was my birthday, obviously. But Tuesday, I had to go back to school and I could not do that. So I have to lie. And I remember tremendous pain I felt lying. So when you are at class and you are at one with the causative dimension of universe, and you are affirming reality as it is 100%. If you are out of integrity, it hurts you. It really have a pain, not a much higher degree of pain than you feel. But I have to do that, and so pain disappeared. But it was like a really. I noticed, wow, it is extremely painful to lie. Yeah.
Yasuhiko, let me formulate this in the words of Naneshwar, because Naneshwar, I think he's talking about the same thing. Let me speak it out, and then you tell me whether it is the same thing. So this is part of, this is like Bhagavad Gita as interpreted by Naneshwar. And I think he's a very deep Advait philosopher. So I think this is the deepest meaning that I have seen of Bhagavad Gita. What he's saying is that what matters is Brahma, which is basically universe, all of existence, God, whatever you want to call it, everything, and Atma. So it is and the principle is that Tat Tvamasi. So the Brahma, which is, let's say, at the top of your head, and the core of your being, your ability to love, you are loving it. You're loving yourself, Atma, and your Atma is Brahma. So you're loving everything. And then from the top of your head, it goes out. So you're approaching everything from as a part of Brahma, as a part of you. So you're saying yes to yourself, to existence as such, and to everything that is there in existence. It is what you're starting out with. And Daneshwar talks about this incredible joy. It's like swimming in a lake of joy, of bliss, which is there at the root of you, because it covers everything. And it connects to the joy in everything, the life in everything. And that's so you have it at the same time.
Yes.
Then he describes the experience. So once you are there, okay, once you have that yes coming from the core of you, going out to Brahma and to everything that is, everything else which is at the periphery, which is all kinds of conflicts between things in periphery, which is what all kinds of most miseries and stuff are, melt away. It's not that you're even pushing them away. They just melt away. He says, he describes it in so many beautiful ways. It's like you have a sun at the core of your being. Everything is lighted. There was darkness over there, but it's gone because it has just melted away. There isn't any, it's no longer, it's no longer relevant. It's no longer relevant because you're standing at the core and you are standing at the principle. He uses the words like Atma Tattva or Brahma Tattva. So that means you are standing at the principle of your own core and the core of existence. This state he calls Brahma Mayata. Brahma Maya means full of. So this is like you have become full of existence itself. And that is what he calls the state of bliss, state of nirvana. This is a profound yes to the core of you, to existence itself, and to everything in the existence. That is what he describes, is the meaning of Gita.
Yes, but you see that experience he described, and we are bound to express, describe what happens, which is an effect. We need to know where he was. And that gave him that expression, that gave him that experience. So we don't want to be caught in his expression or my expression or anybody else's expression, because the cause is that state is really pure nothing. And it is indescribable. And what is described is one step removed from that which is indescribable. So yeah, I absolutely, what you said completely aligns with what I said.
Yes.
And so he is talking about same thing, but the same thing he's talking about, and the same thing I'm talking about, is one step after, so to speak, ontologically after. The original is pure nothing. But nothing sounds like wow, it is no, it is amazing. That nothing is more than everything.
Yes. Okay, I cannot resist this, Yasuhiko. In the introduction to chapter 6, which is on Dhyana Yoga, which is where he's talking about how do you focus in order to create that state. That's what he's saying. He's describing the chapter. He says, what I'm talking about actually cannot be talked about.
Yes.
Okay, because it is an experience, and you have to have it. You can't. Nobody can give it to you. You have to have it. Okay, so I cannot really describe it. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to give you this platter of words, all of which, and they're so beautiful. They are in my native language, very simple language. They're so beautiful that all your senses are going to demand that they are there. It's like your ears are going to say, no, this is meant for me. Your taste is going to say, this is delicious. Your hands are going to go towards them. Your smell is going to be completely overpowered by the fragrance. So all your senses are going to be fighting amongst one another to get at it. So all of your being, all your capability is going to, and then they are going to suddenly discover while fighting that they are all going towards the same thing. And they are all one. That is the experience I hope to create through my writing. But what it is pointing to is wordless. So that's how he puts it.
Maybe last week or so, when Facebook always reminds you of your past post, and one of which was about my post on practice 12 years ago, whatever I wrote. And it says, Aristotle said, doing or action follows being. So the being and then doing. being and doing. That's Aristotle's statement from metaphysics. Anyway, I said practice a reverse engineering of natural process. So you actually, by doing, you reverse engineer being. And so what Krishna said in chapter 6 reminds me of what I said a number of years ago. It is, practice is, reverse engineering. But you see, this new spirituality, if I can move on to,
Please.
Next aspect of it. In Bhagavad Gita and Buddhism, renunciation is a big deal. And the most fundamental sense, you renounce your ego for your Atman. You renounce false way of being and thinking, deviation from the natural, holistic way. On the most fundamental sense, you can never deviate it. But in the relative sense, you are more accord than that. And renunciation is basically from false to truth. You renounce false, and you renounce delusional to more conscious. When in the new spirituality, it is not you who renounce. It is all those elements that are inconducive to your synthropic evolution. They renounce you, so to speak. They just drop away. And in this way of living, you do not need to go to the monastery as I did, or go to the Himalayas or into the cave. You engage with life here and now. It will be good if you find your calling and do whatever it is that you love to do. In that context, your life becomes a practice or evolutionary pathway, and you become what Buddhists call bodhisattva, who are a visionary, engaged in a work to give form to their visions. And in this engagement, they involve others. And others also begin to create the evolutionary movement in their own lives to achieve greater and greater inner freedom, awareness, and awakening. And bodhisattva notion is again one of the seeds we can truly revive today. We no longer need to go to monasteries. I'm sorry, monks. You may need some place where sometimes you do retreat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But funny thing is, so I consciously chose to go to the monastery and seminary to study Buddhism and meditate, because I wanted to be away from this crazy world. But once I entered the monastery, I realized there's a crazy world right there.
Right.
Oh my God. Lots of corruptions. And so, wherever you go, if there are more than 2 or 3 people, you become society. And there is the same microcosm of the macrocosm, which is a society. Everything is there.
I have to tell you one more thing, Yasuhiko. Like Naneshwar, he says, look, it's not about getting away. Okay,
yes.
Because you can go and sit in a cave in Himalaya by yourself.
Yes.
But the way in which your mind works, that you'll still be remembering that, oh, this person said this to me,
exactly.
and they are with you.
Yeah, exactly.
They are with you.
Society comes with you.
Right.
You see, yeah, and so that so both notion of bodhisattva is your life itself is a manifestation of an evolutionary process in greater and greater awakening, expression of greater and greater joy, and expression of greater and greater freedom and awareness, and be with others in such a way that you contribute to other people also go into the stream of evolution in their own lives. And we have an opportunity to do that much more than before. So one element of this bodhisattva, one element of this new spirituality is a revival of bodhisattva way of living in the context of 21st century. So that's another thing. That's why my program is called Mastering Inner and Outer Freedom, because you cannot have your bodhisattva, their engagement in creating greater outer freedom is an essential component of their evolutionary process in unfolding their inner freedom. There is no inner, real separation between inner and outer. There's a distinction, but there's no separation. They are together. And so that's another element of new spirituality. When this happens, spirituality will become more and more an expression of your unique individuality. And because all the knowledge is available today, you may study one master here, another master here, you may study Christianity, Buddhism, everything is available to you. So it is staying at the cons. Your spiritual evolution, you are in charge, and you initiate. And each person will be nurtured by different set of teachings and integrate those teachings in a unique way so that spirituality will become omnicentric. This I have noticed, the sectarian competition. In Japan, in Buddhism, right now there's only two schools, Soto and Rinzai. And Soto says we are the better Zen than Rinzai and vice versa. Somebody like Daisei Suzuki, he was entirely Rinzai, and he spoke negatively of Soto, which he never really studied. He never translated Shobo Genzo, even if he had read it. So people at that level, Daisei Suzuki, great sage in the intellect, he was caught up in this sectarian conflict and comparison. And when you go to India, you meet all kinds of gurus, and my guru is better than your guru, and so on and so forth. My guru is the greatest, maybe for you, but not for other people. And this kind of sectarianism must go. When we each take responsibility and self-initiation for our own spiritual development, starting from the complete affirmation of reality, complete affirmation of ourselves, and open our mind to learning from everybody, then what is there is difference, not opposition. And humanity has been unable to be peacefully together with others who disagree with them. They could not stand the difference because difference became opposition. Hegelian dialectic, thesis, antithesis. Thesis, it is an oppositional logic. You can have a trans-paradigmatic mind where, okay, there's this idea, they are different. Learn from all of them. And you develop yours. It is different from others. And so difference is an opposition. No sectarian conflict and competition, actually, comparison. And there are masters I like better than others because I feel more connection. It does not mean that person is better. My most favorite Indian guru is Sri Nisargadatta Maharaji, because he reminds me of my Zen master. They're very similar, simple, profound, uniquely original. And so I like him. It doesn't mean he's better than others. And so you see, there's a favorite, but it doesn't mean it is better. And this kind of useless comparison and useless conflict must go. And new spirituality of the future is much richer because it is omnicentric, different, and mutually learning.
The most powerful idea on this, how do you deal with differences?
Yes.
And how do you learn from each other? Is the best thing I've found is the Indian idea of namaste.
Mm-hmm.
When you're saying namaste, you're saying the God in me is greeting God in you.
Mm-hmm.
Moment you say that, you're saying that we are saying yes to existence itself. We're saying yes to our own core. You're saying yes to the core of the other person. Everything else is just details of what we can work on.
Absolutely.
And it provides the right context to do that.
20 years ago, I wrote an essay called Freedom from the Guru.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In which I said, Guru is within.
Mm-hmm.
So spiritual evolution is autodidactic process.
Yes.
So the future of spirituality is an omnicentric,
yes,
co-autodidactic process.
yes. Yes, we had Mark Stallman yesterday talking about being autodidact. And his point was that obviously each of us has to be an autodidact. That is human nature.
Yeah.
And that's the best way we can learn from each other. That's the best way you can learn. You can't really learn from other people. You have to, people can give you the water, but you have to drink it. You have to assimilate it yourself. So
absolutely.
At the core, we are autodidacts. And the moment you do that, all of this, you are your own guru, you are your own.
Yes, and actually, maybe in your case or in my case, I fell into being an autodidact. I have been autodidact maybe in the last 50 years.
Yes.
But that's a purpose of education. When you can actually develop every child to be an autodidact, that's end. Then he or she can just continue to learn. They will not depend on any others. So that is consonant or in accordance with the direction of the new spirituality, new humans, autodidactic humans.
There is one more point I wanted to make.
Yes.
that I thought of as you were speaking. By the way, I love your concept of centropy versus entropy.
Yeah.
That you're focused on the what is it that is holding.
SYN.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other point I want to bring up is that of ground and figure. See, this what we're talking about, Brahma, Atma, and everything covering, that is the ground of everything. There are figures that are playing. There are 10,000 things that are playing in the middle, and most people are focused on the figures, on the periphery. But there is this deep ground. And what you're really talking about is be connected to the deep ground, because that's where that is existence. That is existence itself.
Yes. But when you use the word ground, we need to be very careful, because we have a picture of ground to be on the bottom.
Right.
And
right. It's everything.
Yeah, we can't find the words, but it is like a omni-permeating.
Yes.
And
Sky is the part of the ground. Yes, sky is the part of the ground. It's the whole thing. It's
the German mystic Jacob Bohm, I think, said the ground, ground. It is like it is a ground, but it is not the ground.
Yes.
Omni-permeating, omnipresent, grounding.
Yes.
Or sourcing.
Yes.
Causing, which is suprasensory and supraperceptual. And that is a causative dimension of reality. That is omnipresent. It is here, it is there, it is everywhere.
Beautiful. Yasuhiko, I can talk to you forever, but do you want to say anything before I want to give a chance to my friends to ask questions?
No.
Okay.
Fine.
All right.
Maybe interaction can bring more something.
Absolutely. So folks, what we are going to do is, the way we do questions here is we'll collect all the questions only. Try to be very, very brief. Just ask your questions. We'll collect all the questions. I'll organize all of them, and then we will ask the questions. All right. So go ahead and type an exclamation mark if you would like to ask a question. Okay, so we're going to start with, let's see, Rupali, David Adelson, Evanique, and Alice. So just go ahead and state your questions. We'll collect all the questions. And Yasuhiko will, after we collect all the questions, we'll go ahead, I'll organize them, and then we'll go ahead and deal with them. Rupali, go ahead.
Thank you. This was very interesting presentation. I have two questions. One regarding children and teaching them to be autodidacts. How do we teach them to be emotionally stable? The academics, we can teach them to be autodidact, but how about emotional regulation? How do they learn it?
Very good.
So that's one question. And the second one that I have is, when we're talking about the spirituality of the new world, and we're saying, it is part of living now and here, then how, again, do we interact with others who are perhaps not on the same page or same plane of spiritual development? And you're trying to have all the love and wonderful things, but
got it.
The response is not equivalent. Thank you.
Excellent question, Rupali. Yasuhiko, this is my friend Rupali of 25 years, who is an amazing teacher who has changed lives of lots and lots of children. So we'll come to that. Next up is David Adelson, followed by Evanique. David.
Yes, thanks. Very amazing and inspiring talk. My question is about the new spirituality, which is wonderful, but seems very idealistic. And my question is, how does one rationalize between this idealized vision for a unified view on things, and the inherent tribalism that exists in people's psychology. I mean, that I think the West, and I know maybe the Far East, has sort of denied or ignored the existence of tribalism. And in India, I mean, it's people are much more aware of the realism, and that still exists very much in society. So how does one, integrate these two?
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to combine that with Rupali's question of how do you interact with others who are not at the same level. Next up is going to be Evanik, followed by Alice. Evanik.
Hi, thank you so much for this. This was amazing and enlightening. I have two questions as well. You were saying earlier, you were talking about cause, which is hidden, and effect, which is perceptive. My question is, you were saying something about cause being metaphysical. So my question is cause metaphysical? And the second question goes when you were talking about doing versus action follows being. And is that similar to Louis Sullivan's philosophy of form following function?
Can you repeat that question again?
Sure. So Yasuhiko said that doing or action, like the same thing, I guess. Action follows being. Is that the same as Louis Sullivan's philosophy of form following function?
Got it. Excellent. Excellent question. Thank you, Evanik. Next up is Alice, followed by DLJ. Folks, if you have questions, we still have time. Go ahead and put exclamation marks. Questions are far more important than answers. So go ahead and ask your questions. It's going to be fantastic answers, but questions are important. So go ahead. Alice.
Hi, I usually don't speak up. I usually live in the background, but you've got a great teacher today. And I was mentioning earlier, it sprung out within me that I'm already on this journey and I'm already challenging myself spiritually growing, which means that sometimes I outgrow present groups that I'm in or something. Like he was saying, changes may happen and we flow with it. But for me, accepting change is hard with my personality, even though it's part of my chart, Vedic chart always changes. And I need to know, okay, I was in this group and it wasn't right for me, for my future development. But then afterwards, because I have a need to belong, I felt so rejected.
So how do you handle when you
Yeah, like my feeling is, okay, I'm moving forward, yes, in a positive spiritual direction onto my next challenge, but I can't let go to the prior challenge.
Got it.
And I tell myself I failed or I don't fit in because I need belonging.
I'm going to go ahead and put that as a question. Okay.
Okay.
It's basically about the pangs of growth. We'll talk about that. Next up is DLJ. DLJ, what's your question?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for the talk. Yeah, I typed the question in the chat to save you writing it down, but I've got an extra bit, so I'll just repeat it. Very interested in your information model, the 4 levels, information processing, intellect, etc. What's your opinion in terms of development? Did they emerge from each other progressively, or did they co-evolve, do you think? If so, how? Either way. And the extra bit is, does that also, or how much of that applies to other biological life forms?
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, DLJ. Excellent, excellent question. Thank you. All right. So now we're going to go with, we're going to try to answer the questions. Give me just a second here. Let me see.
You can't. So yes. Would you give me 2 minutes break?
Please, please go ahead.
Then...
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, folks, so I'm going to try to organize the questions. I definitely want to, I'm going to talk this out as an entertainment while we're doing, while we're waiting. Okay, so I think the 4-level model is very interesting, how it came to be and the evolution of that. The question of Rupali about how do you deal, suppose you develop this spirituality, but others don't, how do you handle it? Or if you develop it, but you are in the midst of people who think tribally, how do we do that? Okay, so that's one second question we have. I like the idea of the connection between being and becoming. So I will ask him about the connection between being and becoming, the doing and being. and how is it connected to form follows function. I really like the question of Alice, because what happens is that there is growth. And at each stage, we have a group of people around us who are helping us grow. And many times you outgrow it. And how do we handle all of that, that sequence? Okay, and then is cause metaphysics? If we have time for that, we'll get to it. And how do we develop kind of the emotional, we know how to develop the rationality of kids. How do we develop this emotional core in kids? That we will take towards the end. Both these questions we will take towards the end because they are more kind of narrow or more specific. I think the interaction with others is a crucial question. I want to do that fairly early. The 4-level model is also crucial. Growth bank is also crucial. So I'm going to start with the interaction with others. Yasuhiko, so while I've used this time to organize the questions, the first question, I'm going to combine the second question of Rupali and the question by David. Suppose you are on this path. How do you deal with people who are not there, who are at much lower level of spiritual development? And more specific, and in addition to that, how do we do this when so much of the world thinks in tribal group terms? Go ahead.
Now, why do you think people ask this question?
Because I think they run into it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know, for example, Rupali runs the school and she has very high ideals of what the kids can do. And many times parents are not there yet. They are asking for something much, much lower. And she has to actually sell them the idea that no, your child can actually do this. And only when they see the child doing that, they see it. Otherwise they say, no, you're pushing the child enough, you should just give him this particular thing.
So based on what I have said, our new spirituality starts with this absolute affirmation of reality, which means everything that happens in our lives, including how people respond or react to you. And I would like you to remember that Michael Servatus or Giordano Bruno were burnt at the stake. Christ was actually crucified. Spinoza or Nietzsche were ostracized. And Thomas Paine in this country, after he helped the country to be established, he was ostracized from society. So when you have a vision, first we must live as we know to be the way we must live. In my case, it is a living of 100% affirmation and be at cause of my life and of reality. And when you interact with people, you come from there. Everything that happens as a consequence, you say yes to it. That's number one. And so far, none of us has been crucified or burnt at the stake, luckily. Mm-hmm. I have been ostracized, definitely. So whatever happens, that's how it is. So to answer this question, we need to go into each person's particular situation. There is no generalized answer. The general answer I can give is this: to live your life the way you must live your life, and accept or actually affirm all the consequences. That's number one. And As a result, some people like you, some people will dislike you, and some people will even try to, crush you. And oftentimes, people who are real visionaries, they are ostracized from society because you are bringing in something that will disturb their system. So it comes with the territory. So there is no happy ending answer to that question.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
And one thing I am not disturbed by what other people think of me. And it is a very freeing experience. If you're not concerned about what other people think of you, there's an inner freedom that nobody can disturb. And from that space, you do your best to communicate your ideas and visions. And that part, we need to deal with each person, because people found in different situations. I do individual consulting with people, and I do consultation based on where they are in their own lives and whom they're dealing with. But you can be who you are and live the kind of life I just mentioned, independent of what happens in your life. And if you're in that space, fundamentally nothing bothers you. In that, you will find a way to make your vision come true as much as possible. So it is not maybe a good answer or answer you're looking for, but that's how it is. And then so I'd be happy to have an individual conversation based on the individual situation to how to make the idea come into a reality. And just because you're loving person, you're an enlightened person that have a positive impact on people. Yes, you do. At the same time, how people react is they react from where they are. Really. At worst, you'll be crucified. At best, you'll be ostracized. However, you'll always have people who actually will appreciate what you have to offer. And so you won't be a department store, you will be a high-end boutique shop. But then there are 40 people here. We each have a high-end boutique shop and come together and become a department store.
Right. Wonderful.
You see?
Yeah. Thank you, Yasuhiko. I'm going to get one more question on the table, and that's from Joe. Joe, go ahead.
Actually, I'm going to change my question just based on that answer, because you mentioned that you do consulting on where people are. How do you determine where people are in their process? So that would be
very good. Thank you. Let's go with the next question is going to be about growth pangs. Spiritual growth at a given state, there are some people around you that are going to help you. And then you're going to find that you're going to go above that. And at that point, you're going to develop conflicts with them. And you have to be willing to go and find the next one. So how do you manage the growth process when most things outside you have an inertia of their own or speed of their own?
Again, the question comes from a place where you cannot find the answer. how to manage, where is the whole way of thinking from which this how to manage question come from, must be let go. And secondly, we will make lots and lots of mistakes. You know, we don't go through life. If you are really trying something, you know, original and new, or pursuing an ideal which never happened before, on a daily basis, you make some mistakes and errors. So insist on being who you are and insist on your commitment and deal with people in that context, and that you will have wisdom come out of your mouth. You know, we cannot generalize what you want to do or what you need to do.
Okay, the next one, I'm going to take Joe's question. You know, how does one person figure out what the other person's context is, or how you yourself can figure out what you need at a given point of time?
Well, through listening. Listening to the person or listening to yourself, and really until you understand it, you don't stop listening and inquiring. There's no other quick path.
Wonderful. Next up, I'm going to go with the question that Evanik asked, but I'm going to make it broader about being and becoming. You know, she's talking about doing or action proceeding for being, whether it is how it is related to Louis Sullivan's function of form follows function. But anything you want to say about being and becoming or form follows function?
So Buddhas and you know, Buddhist and now our meditative awareness makes it aware that reality is an ongoing becoming. There was no beginning, there will be no end. Becoming, 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 becoming. Only being there is a being of becoming. And the universe is a becoming of becomings. And depending on your scope of awareness, that areas of becoming has a being to it. So looking at the universe from becoming perspective is one way that gives you the kind of awareness that is not available from the awareness that is based on being, and vice versa. And so purpose of human life, actually purpose of existence is to be, which is ongoingly fulfilled. Any moment we die, we have died having fulfilled our purpose, our God-given purpose. And that being ongoingly becomes. And that being itself is becoming.
Wonderful.
And we have a say in the matter of becoming. So once we stay at cause, we become as cause. So we can create our own destiny for this reason. So you say yes to everything. And that absolute affirmation create a possibility for the future. which is not available if you have not said that absolute affirmation. And this is not affirmation, new age affirmation you are affirming in your head. No, must be based on true understanding.
Wonderful. Next question is on the 4 levels: information, intellectual understanding, intuition, and inspiration. How did these come to be? Is there an evolutionary, if you think about it from kind of developmental perspective or evolutionary perspective, and any thoughts about the relationships between these 4?
The potential for that, all 4, is present in most human beings. First and second, there's a kind of a sequence. You can't have the second without first.
Mhm.
And the third and fourth, sometimes in life, opens up. But those people who had first and second not fully developed, the degree to which the intuitive and spiritual intelligence benefit the person's awareness is very limited. So in this sense, when you have the first and second fully developed, and then having intuition, and then spiritual intelligence or inspiration, the richness of those intuition and inspiration will be far greater than the people who have not developed the first and second. And existing society, most people stay in the first stage only because they are not to think. To develop the second stage of intellection and pattern recognition and understanding and creating new knowledge requires thinking. And unfortunately, very few people today have developed it. You cannot test this ability with your IQ test or even your school test. In the school test, you test the first level, information processing. So if you have good memory, good quick mind, and you know how to apply, which also you learn how to apply, then you will do great in the IQ test and you will do great in the SAT score. But there's no thinking involved. Thinking requires something more. And that something more only comes when you begin to ask questions, your own questions. For example, you find, well, Newton said that light is a particle, and Thomas Young says that light is a wave. Now, 2 pieces of knowledge by 2 great minds, there are contradictions. So what is it that can actually unite them? You begin to ask this question. I am sure Einstein asked this question. What is now? Everybody assumes about space and time. Well, space is this and time going this. And he asked this question. What is actually space and time? He was a genius because he was able to ask that question. And we only see the answer he came up with. But we don't know the original question he asked. That goes back to that, teaching our children becoming autodidact.
Please, yeah, that's the next question. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, on the other hand, I may not be qualified to answer this question because I don't have a child. I took it seriously, to be a parent. So I wanted to make sure that I become mature, responsible human being. And somehow I missed an opportunity to become a parent. Anyway, so to teach children to become autodidact, what do the autodidact do? They actually ask questions on their own and then find answer, check, do the research and then find the answer for themselves. That's an autodidact. Nobody tells them. So with children, I may not be qualified to really go deep into this because I haven't had the experience of actually helping a child becoming autodidact. But the basic principle is to nurture the child in such a way that his or her questions are appreciated, number one. And mother or father or teacher want to go along with the child and let him or her find an answer. If the question is really a good question, you want to really encourage them to ask questions. And that's second. And the emotional component of this, when child asks questions and the parent said, don't ask that stupid question, there's one kind of emotional reaction. And then when parents says, that's an interesting question. And when the questions are acknowledged, child has a different kind of emotion. Many of the so-called negative emotional reactions that kids have is simply because they are not being understood. If we can remember our childhood, 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, and correct the time when we are upset. Oftentimes it is because there was no listening on the part of the parents. And understandable, they're busy and stuff like that. So I think bringing a child into this world is a tremendous responsibility. And in my view, mother, at least a mother, the first 3 to 7 years, they should really be together. And many things that is happening today, the problem that kids have is because they are neglected. Their real need and their real things is not, satisfied. This goes all the way to the beginning. There's a difference between being born through birth canal and cesarean section. When you go through the birth canal, you get all the viruses and bacteria and all kinds of life forms, body absorbs them. Then, if you have you're breastfed until you can eat something else, you receive all kind of immunological defense system from things from the mother. So many children, so people who are already artificially born and then grew up in a very artificial environment where their natural needs are not met and nurtured, and their intelligence grow by asking questions, and those natural gross needs are not met, they will have a emotional reaction to life. So they're already predisposed to say no instead of yes. So this is a huge subject, but it is really, we want to start from the conception all the way to maybe 7 years old.
Yes.
And by the time boy or girl become 7 years old, he or she will be kind of predisposed to be autodidactic or not.
I have to tell you a story, Yasuhiko.
Yes.
Rupali is a dear family friend, and her son Agastya and my niece Sonal grew up together, and Rupali, I, and Rohit spent an enormous amount of time with them. So my niece got so used to asking questions. So even after she moved away from where I was living, I would get these calls. She never says hello or anything. Just ask. I pick up the phone. How is it that these large pictures on my TV come through that little wire? So the questions, it was considered natural for her to pick up the phone and just call and
Really?
ask any question. And I have to tell you one more story. It connects to the others and you. Like when my niece went to high school, I asked her, what do you like the school? She says, no. She says, only thing I like about it is that they let me use my computer, so I can look up everything that they're talking about on the computer, so I don't have to listen to what they are saying about the lecture. But she says it's very odd. Everybody in my class is really worried about what they think about what other people think of them. And actually nobody cares about anything. So it's like, she says, it's like mirrors reflecting each other.
Mhm.
And there is nothing there.
Mhm.
So that's what her observation was.
Good. Kind of reminds me one piece that I didn't say with respect to the original question. We talk about the listening. When we are dealing with people, one of the things we can actually do, really do, and develop is to listen. And somebody doesn't understand or opposing you, if we listen and understand the speaker changes, it's almost like you see, it is an eternal frustration of every human not being understood. And some of those people who appear to be such a nasty humans and always say no to you, when you listen, really listen, and understand where he or she comes from, and understand what he or she is saying, really, the other person actually change. It's like So again, this is one expression of absolute affirmation. Without judging what a stupid thing that they're saying. No, just listen. And so I'm adding this to my response to the first question. So you stay in that be at cause, 100 affirmation, and case by case, we have a different answer, but universally, listen to the other person or other people to the level that you completely understand them. The understanding dissolves their opposition to you.
Wonderful. All right, Yasuhiko, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I'm glad that we are going to be doing this every month. Are there any final thoughts you have?
This is a very this is a subject that I'm really interested in, and I'm very grateful that we had this opportunity to talk, because through talking I begin to develop my own thinking. And thanks so much for listening, and let's continue.
Yes, let's
Yes.
see you soon. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.